negative voice doesn't have to be the dominant one in your life, because she's tearing you down. And if you don't believe you can get more from men, deserve more, and men will ever get it, that becomes the script that will continue to play throughout your life. I want to replace it with a better script. You do too. Hey, this is Evan Marcounts, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women and your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast. Today, we're talking about something that affects everybody in the whole world. Men, women, young, old. This is not specific to any one person, but it is a great bit of wisdom that I picked up from a very old friend of mine. Her name is Lori Gottlieb. If you don't know Lori, you probably should. I've known her for 25 to 30 years. She once went out with my roommate. We wrote TV scripts together. She got me my first book agent. I coached her when she was writing her bestseller, Marry Him, The Case for Settling for Mr. Good Enough. And then her really big bestseller is called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Once upon a time, interviewed her on the Love You podcast back in 2017. Anyway, Lori writes the Ask a Therapist column and does the Dear Therapist podcast for The Atlantic. And I don't know where I was listening to her, but she said something that I thought was simple and powerful and elegant and is worth talking about with you today. Think of the person whose voice means the most to you in your world. Sometimes that's a parent, sometimes it's a best friend, sometimes it's a partner. Now, and again, I'm going to botch the original thing she said. Now think of that person's voice and how hopefully they love you and support you and believe in you and see the best in you. Now consider the voice that takes up the most space in your head. It's not the most supportive one. It is your own voice. It's the voice that you live with, and it is relentlessly negative. Michael Singer talked about this in The Untethered Soul at great length. If you're going to look for a pretty good book, it's not about spirituality. It sounds actually more like a college lecture. It's a really good read. We recommend it and love you. But basically, he says, and Echkhart Tolle, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Power of Now, A New Earth, all say the same thing. We have a voice in our head. That voice in our head is not something that we entirely control. If you try to sit quiet and meditate, you'll hear your voice in your head. And he or she, as most of my listeners are, have a voice that is relentlessly negative coursing through our brains. So Lori, as a therapist, asks people to consider the value of this voice. Is it real? Right? Is this voice telling me something that's true? Is it telling me something that's positive? Is it telling me something that's useful? These are questions to ask yourself. And she asked a client, I remember listening to this. This is something she said on another podcast. She asked a client of hers to tap into that voice and every day write down when she heard her inner voice talking and what she said. And she would take a glance at herself in the mirror and be like, oh my God, you look disgusting. Or she would see a guy online that she'd want to write to, and her first reaction is, you're not good enough to get this guy. Right? And on and on and on and on. So this voice in our head, which we call us, we say it's us, but it's really our worst enemy. It's not our best friend. We would never be friends with someone who is this relentlessly negative with us. You'd cut that person out of your life if they were always cutting you down, telling that you were unattractive, telling you that you weren't good enough, telling you that you didn't deserve more, telling you that you just have to put up with all of life's bullshit and smile and nod and agree and not raise your standards higher for what you deserve. And that's something that brings it back to what we do here in Love You, the idea that I work with women who are high-achieving women, powerful women, intelligent women, beautiful women. I mean, I work with superstars, but they haven't embraced their superstardom entirely. The metaphor I often use, they got one really, really strong muscle and they got one really weak muscle. That weak muscle is their confidence when it comes to dating, confidence when it comes to men, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to setting boundaries. So one woman could be a fierce legal advocate and in a relationship be fine with a guy who texts her once a week for sex. Same exact person. All right, someone could be a multimillionaire who has thousands of employees and still put up with a verbally abusive relationship from a guy for years at a time. These are real stories, by the way, not made up stories. So if you can identify with that in some way, realize you don't have to be a victim to it. It's terrible to have a negative voice in your head. You're also a victim of circumstance in that case, right? You didn't necessarily cause that voice. You've been taught that. Probably something you got from how you were raised as a kid. If your parents didn't give you all the love and self-esteem in the world, you carry that lack of love and self-esteem out into dating relationships and men, chose men who reinforced the idea that you weren't good enough, men who were critical, men who were difficult, men who told you what to do, tried to control you, ended up hurting you and abandoning you. And so when you realize, oh, that's not the kind of person I need to be hanging out with. I need to be hanging around with people who believe in me, who bolster me, who see me as beautiful and smart and kind and worthy and valuable and appreciate me. And you probably have some friends who do that, but your best friend is the one in here. She's the one who gets the most airtime. Part of what we do in Love You is try to surround you with so much love that we become the new voice in your head and we replace the old negative script. This one's doomed. This one's going to fail. This one's going to hurt me. Why do I even bother? Right? The glass half empty script. We replace it with the glass half full script because I believe in you. I see the good in you. And when you come to Love You and you become part of the Love universe, awkward, but I'll say it anyway, the Love universe, you're surrounded by, over 100 women at any given time who also see you, have walked a mile in your shoes, have come out on the other end with more self-esteem, with more confidence, with better ability to communicate and set boundaries, and with healthy relationships where you're treated the way you deserve to be treated. Never in this job do I ever want to sound like I'm victim blaming. I'm not. It's not your fault that you are in this position. You do have the ability to take responsibility for what happens moving forward, right? Not responsibility for what happened to you, but from this point forward, you have the option of choosing abundance, choosing confidence, choosing positivity. It does not have to be this way. The negative voice doesn't have to be the dominant one in your life because she's tearing you down. And if you don't believe you can get more from men, deserve more in men, will ever get it, that becomes the script that will continue to play throughout your life. I want to replace it with a better script. You do too. My name is Evan Mark Katz. Thanks for tuning into the Love You podcast. If you enjoy this and you're on YouTube, please click on the subscribe button and ring the bell and get notified when new content comes out. If you are on Apple Podcasts, hey, do me a small favor. Give me a positive review. You can give me a negative review, but positive is better. 5 stars and write something because people pay attention to that algorithm. It actually makes a difference in how the word of Love You and the Love You podcast spreads. So finally, if you hear this podcast and by the end of the podcast, you're not just feeling somewhat seen and emotional, but you actually want to produce a better love life, right? Produce a better result so that you're not just listening to podcasts, but you are done with podcasts and you could just go and live the rest of your life with a guy who loves you and takes care of you. Go to evanmarkkatz.com/apply. Give me your name and email address. I'll give you access to a special video that helps you fix your broken man picker. And you can get an hour on the phone with me. We'll do a free Love You breakthrough session, and we'll figure out if you're a good fit for coaching. It is my pleasure and it's my honor to host this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here next week and look forward to seeing you in Love You. Bye-bye.